Hello and welcome to the first Archaeoscoop of 2013. On this rather rainy day, my top three headlines are as follows. Headline number one comes from Silbury Hill in Wiltshire, part of the Avebury complex and indeed one of the most famous monuments in all of Britain. Essentially a man-made mountain, or well, hill. And unfortunately this is news of it being damaged by people who are visiting the site. For decades there's been a policy of extremely limited and certainly monitored access to Silbury Hill because it is in an increasingly delicate condition. But unfortunately a combination of people accessing the monument without permission and also heavy rain in recent weeks, as there is at Wallsend today, has led to people creating what Jim Leary, archaeologist for English Heritage, describes as rather hideous scars on the side of the hill. He, and English Heritage by extension, requests that people who like this monument, and presumably people who are visiting it, do indeed have some respect for the site, or indeed just some curiosity, express this by not destroying it. In other words, don't try and climb the mount unsupervised, especially after wet weather. So this, unfortunately, is the first headline of 2013, and it's about damage done to a national treasure. If you want to read more about that, check out headline number one. Headline number two comes from the Saqqara necropolis in Egypt, where 8 million dog mummies have been uncovered. Yes, canine mummies. Now, this is linked to, it is thought, a cult of Anubis, and the researchers involved are, quote, trying to understand how this fits religiously with that cult. However, the necropolis itself sounds remarkable, and 8 million mummies is an awful lot of research to do. So this is probably going to be an ongoing story, but well worth reading about. So check out headline number two for more on that. Headline number three actually is with regards to Viking women, and we're being requested not to underestimate Viking women. I certainly don't, I must admit, after my time working in York. But a researcher from Norway in an MA thesis has made the argument that, for example, the Suburb ship has been, even though it's credited as being one of the greatest, if not the greatest ship find ever from that period, it's also in some ways relegated because she argues that because there are 2 women buried on the ship rather than men, they are seen as having been somehow lesser than great kings. She also makes the argument that the recognition of male and female burials, for example in archaeology, is not quite as clear-cut as one might assume, and that rather than making assumptions based on the writings of people who came many hundreds of years after the Viking period, and indeed, as she puts it, were part of a more misogynistic religion, i.e. Christianity, we should be focusing, or rather redoubling our focus on the archaeology and trying to interpret it from a well, I suppose actually a more gender neutral, but with a view to finding the female aspect in archaeology from the period. So this is quite an interesting perspective, and also actually a remarkable challenge in so much as, well, personally I've always taken for granted that the Suburb ship is a statement of powerful feminine identity, but it seems that many people still aren't willing necessarily to go along with that. So for more on this story, check out headline number 3. Again, well worth having a look at. And for those news stories and all the other news stories from the past couple of days, check out the links below. One of my favourites actually, which I haven't mentioned in my top 3, is actually to do with supposed voluntary slavery at Egyptian temples. Papyri rather, have shown that this may well have been the case. So for all of those, go and check out those links and read to your heart's content. Until next time, hopefully the weather will be better. Bye bye.